Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $eJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, please make sure you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast, definitely on our YouTube channel, and also on Spotify or Google Podcasts, or even on Facebook. Whatever major platform you think that we're on there, Instagram, everywhere. So please make sure that you guys subscribe and follow and share. Okay, thank you guys very much. Once again, today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Mr. Dustin. How are you today?
Man, I am good, Ernest. I am doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited, ready to jump into everything that Deal to Heal has in store.
Okay. So good, man. I'm glad. Good.
Yeah.
So we are already ready. So first of all, let me say thank you for taking out the time to be on here, because you could be doing anything else, and you took out the time to spend with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it. So let's jump right in. First things first, I know you are a girl dad. And
Yes.
So anytime I have a girl dad on, because a girl dad like myself, I have to ask you 2 questions just straight off the bat. So the 2 questions are, what does it mean for you to be a girl dad? And the second one would be, what is something that your daughter or daughters have taught you?
You know what? First thing that pops into mind when you say, what does it mean to be a girl dad? Protector. That's the very first thing that comes to my mind as a youth pastor for 7 years. Man, I know what these kids are up against. I know what the youth of today is into. I know what's going on out there. And man, protection, dude. That's the first thing, Ernest, that pops into my mind. And then when you say, what have they taught me? The first thing that popped into my mind was patience. So protection and patience, bro. I have my way of doing things. Let me just tell you, I'm bald. you were bald. They are not bald, okay? And so when it's time to go, it's easy for me. T-shirts and shorts, flip
Right.
flops out the door. Listen, man, it's a whole nother beast when we start trying to get all these ladies ready. So, yeah, patience.
Right. And you said ladies with an S. So you have
I, I
two
have
daughters
two
and a
daughters and a
wife, right?
wife.
Right. So
Yes,
that's
I have a
three against
13-year-old.
one. That's not good odds. You see, like you're gonna lose every day.
Man, I have 13-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old daughter. The 4-year-old is off the chain. The 13-year-old, man, she's coming into her own self, and she's, man, 35, every bit of it.
Well, I'm lucky. I'm lucky a little bit in that area. My baby just made 19 this year. She's still my baby, but she's a
Congrats.
young lady now, and so that brings a whole nother era of problems. So you know
Yes.
what I mean? It's one thing when they growing up, it's like, okay, that's one set of problems. But then when they think they grown, then that's a whole nother set of problems.
Whole nother. I hadn't got there yet. I'm gonna learn.
Yeah. But take your time. Take your time, man.
Yeah.
Ain't no rush in that one. Just like, So anyway, let's jump right in, Dustin. So first of all, introduce yourself
Yes.
to my listeners and tell them exactly what it is that you do.
Okay, so I'm actually pretty doggone excited today because today that I'm on this podcast, the day that we're actually recording this, I just released to the world publicly that I have started my nonprofit. And so it's Dustin Rivenbark and Associates Incorporated. And what I do is I'm a youth speaker. I mentioned before that I was a youth pastor for almost 7 years. My heart yearns and aches for the next generation. And my goal is to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth. That was Jesus's last command, and so that's one of my life goals, is to impact as many youth as possible while I still have breath in these lungs. And part of the vessel that I'm going to use to do that is my nonprofit organization, so I can make local impact as well as global impact. And I'm just excited, man. And so there's so many ways for people to partner. There's so many ways for people to help. Please reach out to me. You see my Instagram there, whatever means, and let's get plugged in and let's change the world.
That's right. That's right. And so even with that, Dustin. So you mentioned about you started the nonprofit.
Yes.
But as part of the nonprofit is also part of what you're already doing, which is speaking, right?
Yes. And so as a youth speaker, youth evangelist, the nonprofit is actually to help fuel that mission, right? To go and to evangelize and to go into these schools. I do motivational speaking. I do inspirational speaking. I do evangelism. All of that. I do a lot of work in secular areas, like secular schools where you cannot mention the name of Jesus, but you can tell it. You can tell biblical principles in a secular way, and nobody knows any different, right? And so, but people can tell a difference in through you, and so that's part of the mission, is doing local events here in town through my nonprofit to reach the next generation. I've got an awesome idea coming up, an awesome event here locally. And the rest of it is spreading that mission. I hope one day to be able to sponsor underprivileged kids with college. I hope to be able to do that through the nonprofit one day, but we're taking little bites, as we go.
Okay. So okay, we're taking little steps as we go. So since we're taking steps, let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning of Dustin and where Dustin started. So I know that at one point, you dealt with some addiction, I think yourself, as well as some family members. So let's go back into that and just kind of go through the progression of who you were at that time and leading up into becoming the man that you are now and doing the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so anytime you want to jump in, jump in. So I basically say that I grew up, Ernest. I grew up living out of a suitcase. My dad, he worked offshore on drilling rigs for 2 weeks. He would do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And my mother was addicted to pain medication, and we moved around a lot, man. But I would live with my dad for 2 weeks, and I would live with my mom for 2 weeks, and it was odd, man. Every time I would never be at one house long enough to fully unpack my suitcase to,
Mm.
before I had to pack up and go to the next place again. And it was like that for many, many years. It was confusing. When I was at my dad's, we had to do things this kind of way. And then when I was at my mom's, we had to do things very loosely in this kind of way. And it was just this struggle until finally I was old enough to say, hey, I want to go here or I want to stay here. And I chose to stay with my mom because in my adolescence, freedom
Mm.
seemed more inviting, right?
Right.
And so in and through that, we moved around a lot, and it exposed me to a lot of different people, a lot of different things, a lot of different schools. It wasn't long before, I was young when I started stealing cigarettes, drinking, and then that turned into drug use and all of this in a lifestyle that just was not good. I did a lot of hard things until my mom one day called my dad and said, "Listen, I can't deal with him." Said, "You have to take him." And so this was going into my ninth grade year or so, ninth, 10th grade year. And I moved from a small town in Alabama, which I currently live in now, to Houston, Texas,
Mm.
which is enormous. And
I've been there.
let me tell you, H Town has its set of problems. And it's
Mm.
a wonderful, wonderful place. Okay. It's got a lot of great things. But let me tell you this, with the mindset and the mentality I had, I grew up 10 times faster. Okay. And was exposed to a lot more. All right. Until I finally got out of school. I dropped out of school my senior year and went back home. And I moved back home. Um, man, I moved in with my mom. I wasn't hitting on nothing, Ernest. I wasn't hitting on nothing. It was going downhill fast until one day my dad called. When he called me, he heard the sound of a hungry man, a man that was tired of being where he was at, a man who had hit rock bottom. And my dad said, "Dustin," he said, "I can do something with a hungry man as long as you don't lose that hunger." And he helped me get an interview offshore on drilling rigs. And I spent 10 and a half years, man, um, in the oil and gas industry, completely vanished from that old lifestyle. I run into people nowadays that's like, "Man, where did you go? What happened to you?" I had to vanish, Ernest. I had to
Mm.
vanish.
Yeah.
And I worked 10 and a half years until about 7 years ago. The bottom fell out of the oil field. 200,000 jobs were lost.
Mm.
And mine was one of them.
Mm.
And
Okay.
in and through that process, I experienced a lot of things. I saw a lot of things, was exposed to a lot of things. My mother, um, had really started to spiral. And life was really going downhill. She had brittle bone disease on top of all of her addictions and all of this, man. The average kid plays outside. I would play, man, in the back of the car headed to the pawn shop to go pawn something. You know, it was a lot, man. It was a lot. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
So one of the things I heard you say that you mentioned that you said you had to vanish, right? And
Yeah,
so and I like that you said that because sometimes the environments that we are in, you know, is one of the biggest hindrances, and just by changing your environment, change your whole life. Like you said, you went from one environment and your dad put you in a whole nother environment, which gave you 10 years of growth. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Just by changing your environment. And so that's an important lesson, for our listeners,
Yeah.
to pick up on, that sometimes when you're in a position or in a place and you feel like you've hit rock bottom, sometimes the best thing to do is to find another bottom,
That's
right?
it.
Because on one hand, the bottom could be the bottom of a pit. On another hand, the bottom could be the bottom of a stair. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? So
Yeah.
it's just where you're starting at. So if you're in the bottom of a pit and you need to get out, you need to find the bottom of the stairs and start working your way back to the top. You
Amen.
know. And another thing that I'd like to mention to our listeners too with environment is sometimes you may not be able to physically move to another environment, but
Right.
mentally you can move to another environment, and that's by taking in the things that you feed your mind.
Look,
Feeding your mind through books, through music, through motivational speaking, through videos. All those things that you can bring into your environment and build a whole new environment in your mind before you're able and before you're ever able to physically move to another environment.
yeah, are you familiar with Jamal King, the creator of Make Real Estate Real?
I definitely am, and I have
All
that, and I bought it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I
I'm in
did.
Make Real Estate Real. In fact, I got his book over here with his signature, and it says anything is possible. And so he says your greatest level of exposure will determine your level of success. Even if you can't physically move out of the location, you have to find things that will bring your level of exposure that will heighten it. You have to
Mhm.
heighten that level of exposure, just like you said, whether it's through motivational speakers, whether it's through whatever you put in here, right? We have to we have to be exposed in order to know what's out there, in order to see that where I'm at, that this is not all there is. You have
Right.
to.
Yeah, yeah, and it may be hard, right? It may be
Yeah.
hard because we deal with a lot of things, and I know before we got started, I had mentioned to you, that recently I've had a loss in my family, which was my godfather, and we talked briefly even about losses, right? Which is family members and loved ones, and you mentioned to me about losing your daughter and I believe your grandmother. And just tell us a little bit about that, those circumstances that was around, and even what were some of the things that help you get from that, deal with those losses to still keep moving forward on that trajectory that you're now on, that your father helped you get in by changing that environment.
So great timing, because I had just led into the oil field collapsing. 200,000 jobs were lost. Mine was one of them. I found myself on 25 acres, an old farmhouse. Wife was now pregnant, and now no job. All right. So it was, my identity was in the oil field, man. I had I had started to become something. I had gone from a roustabout to a subsea engineer. I bled black oil through my veins, man. And then all of a sudden, it was snatched from me. Now, I will say this. Let me back up about a year before, maybe a little more. I had felt the call to go into ministry. A lot had happened in that 10 and a half years through a local church. God had done some wonderful things in and through my life. And I was feeling like going into ministry. But right as soon as it collapsed, I go into this. We find out my wife's pregnant. 17 weeks in, we go in for the ultrasound, and they tell us the baby doesn't have kidneys or a bladder. So she's not going to survive out of the womb. She has what she calls Potter's syndrome. And so, man, we were hearing words like termination, abortion, all of these different things. We sought wisdom through pastors, all of this stuff. What do we do? Like there's no, this baby's not going to make it. We determined that God is the giver and the taker of life. And we decided to carry Callie Grace for as long as God would sustain her. And my wife made it 8 months. 1 month shy of full term, Callie Grace passed away in the womb. We had to go in and take her. And that day in the hospital, man, that was one of the hardest moments of my life. I really experienced humanity in that moment. A couple of months later, I lost my mother to a drug overdose. A drug addiction that I told you about had finally taken her life. A couple months after that, I lost my grandmother. Now, to the final stages of dementia. After losing my baby, Callie Grace, seeing death at the beginning of life, middle age with my mom, end of life with my grandmother, Ernest, I learned we only get one shot at this life. We only get one opportunity this side of eternity. What are we going to do with it? Now, a lot of people could have taken the pressure of all of that, right? And completely given up. Okay? I don't blame you. All right? I see where that could happen. Or through a life-changing study from the book of Joshua, God looks at, or God goes to Joshua and said, Moses is dead. Which in turn means, yes, that happened, Dustin. Yes, that happened. But I've got plans for you. I have plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and to put you on your feet. And your life has a purpose and a mission. And we're going to use all of this hardship, all of this misfortune, and use it for his glory. And so that's kind of what kind of set the stage and started setting the opportunity for me to go into ministry. That all happened during around that first year of ministry. And it was very, very hard. But as I just stepped one foot in front of the other and saw God's provision, felt the hand of the Holy Spirit on my life, all of that just strengthened and molded it and compounded in me that he is real, right? That God is real and his plans for me are real. And those plans are to take his word to the youth of the next generation, for sure.
Man, I love that. I love that, man. And I often share about my whole thing with depression, because like you said, even with your circumstances, you can see how someone could get to a point where they wanted to give up, or they want to give up. And that's one of the things that I went through in a certain time span where I was depressed, I was in debt, I ended up getting divorced. My mother-in-law at the time, who I was very close to, passed away from cancer. And then 3 years later, my mother also passed away from cancer. And so that whole thing, within that same time period, all the things that I was dealing with at that time definitely led me through a depression stage. And even, like I said, I've talked about it before on the podcast of, going through that depression, and even getting to the point where I was having, suicidal thoughts and actually contemplating, suicide. But, one of the other things that God gave me that I often tell I often speak about now is when we're going through something, God gives us a choice.
Yes.
And that choice is, are you going to come out a victor of this thing, or are you going to be a victim of it? And those of us that he allows and strengthens to come out victorious over whatever that circumstance is that we are in, it then becomes our job to go back and help those who are still victims,
100%.
bring
Yeah.
them into the other side of it. And so I definitely appreciate, even how your story goes on along that same line with the
Yeah.
things that you're dealing with that catapulted you into your mission and your ministry now, where that same pain that you were dealing with, you didn't allow it to you didn't fall victim to it, but you became a victor over it, and now using that message to go forth and help our students, which definitely we need in this time in this
Ernest, you
space.
mentioned suicide. When I lost my job, when I lost my identity to working in the oil field and growing in that stature and all of those, when 200,000 jobs were lost, my dad and I personally know people who put a gun to their head when the oil economy collapsed. And a lot of people, I've heard people often say, there's no way I could commit suicide. I just don't understand. I just don't understand how somebody could do that. There's no way I could do that. It's the unforgivable sin. This yada yada. And I've heard all these different scenarios, and I'm going to tell you right now. I understand it. I understand it. Here's the thing, man. People get to a such a depressed state, they
Mm-hmm.
fall into that victim mentality. I'm so glad you brought out being a victim or a victor, because that is exactly the mentality that I talk about when I talk about a life lived for Jesus. Is a life. You're in a battle every day you wake up. You're in the battle of your life. I'm sick of people saying I got a boring life. Oh, my life is boring. Nothing exciting. Bro, you're the Indiana Jones of your life. Every day you wake up, there's a battle for your soul. And so with that, man, it's like, but we're fighting a battle from victory. We're not fighting for victory. There's a difference. It's not on me, right? It's not on me to figure out everything. I'm fighting from victory. We're already victorious, man. The fact that I'm breathing air in my lungs, speaking life into this podcast is victory, man. And when I'm constantly striving for victory, and then all of a sudden you lose everything, oh yeah, depression's real. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because even me myself, and I was just having this conversation with someone the other day, and they were having the same sentiments about, I don't see how someone could do that, and so I was telling them my story. Like, beforehand, I was that same person. I was the same person that was like, who could do that? Why would you do that to your loved ones? And that's a selfish act, to take the easy way out. And then, because when you someone commits suicide, you don't take away your pain, you just transfer it. So now you're free from it, but you transfer that same pain to all your loved ones, who now have to not only deal with the fact that you're not here, but deal with the fact of how you left. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And so, but on the other hand is, and what I told them, and they were saying that they don't understand it, and I said, I hope you never understand it.
That's it.
I hope you never
Amen.
understand it, because the only
Amen.
way you can understand it is to be in that place. And I would not wish that place on anybody,
Yep.
And I said, we were having a conversation. I'm like, I can't really explain it to you, because one of the ways I explain it is your threshold of the thing that pushes you to that breaking point may be different from the next person's. Maybe you can only take, one heavy load. Maybe somebody else can take 10. You know what I'm saying? And so, but you can't look at that person that's taking one and say, well, you're weak or whatever, because nobody knows how much you can bear to get to that point where you start even thinking like that. But I do know that it's a low point, and I don't wish that point on anybody, because
Amen.
everybody is not blessed to come to the other side of it. Some people end up taking their lives, and then again transferring that pain that they had to their loved ones who are still here. And so, yeah, I hope you never understand it.
That's it.
And I don't want nobody to understand it. You
That's
know what
that's
I
it,
mean?
Ernest, man. And so going through all of that shifted something in me to where clearly reading the book of Joshua, something connected, something I can't describe it. All I can tell you is that the Holy Spirit was so alive inside of me when I read the words that were in that book. That I just read it over and over and over. And all of a sudden, I started seeing a pattern. There were 6 battle principles from the story of Joshua that changed my life. And this, I do believe, is my life mission, is to get these principles, whether it be told in a secular way, whether it be given evangelistic style at church. I got to get these principles into people's hands and let them know that there is life on the other side.
Right. And those principles, going through that also led you to write your book, right? And
Yes, and I have it. I have it right here. My book
okay.
is Courage and Redemption: The 6 Battle Principles from the Story of Joshua.
Okay, all right. So we're here.
Right
So
here.
so you read it through Joshua, and you're inspired to write this book. And so you write this book, which is now part of your mission that you're going. So I don't want you to give us all the information, because
Yeah,
we can buy the book. You need to buy the book, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
well, let's say 3. Let's go with 3. So
Okay.
if you share with us, 3 of the principles of your choice, that you go over in your book, that will help someone that's dealing with, any of the things that we've already spoke about, or something that we haven't even spoken about at all, but knowing that they're in this process of figuring out whether they're going to be a victor or a victim of the situation that they're in now. And reading your book and listen to your principles, just give us something that can help that person to get to the other side of where they're at.
So, Ernest, whoever's listening, I may never get the opportunity again ever to speak to them. I got to give you all 6. But I'm going to give it to you in a way. I got to give
All
you
right,
all
all right.
6, man. I got to
Let's
give it
go.
to them.
Let's go.
And
Let's
so
go.
and so in that, I'll give it to them in a way where I don't give them all the info. But number one, when Moses had passed away, Moses wasn't allowed to take the Israelites into the promised lands. Moses passed away, and basically the Lord calls on Joshua and says, Moses, my servant, is dead. You're going to take the people. First thing Joshua does, we know Joshua was scared because God tells Joshua 3 times in the first 9 verses, do not be afraid. All right. 3 times in the first 9 verses, you can go back and look. He tells Joshua not to be afraid. That lets you know that Joshua was scared. Okay. This was before Joshua, right? The warrior. He was just Joshua. Okay. And so he says, hey, you're going to take the Israelites into the promised land. And the first thing he says, he tells the people to prepare. My first key battle principle is preparation. Prepare for battle. Okay. He tells them to prepare provisions for yourself first. And he says, for within 3 days, we will cross the Jordan and we will go. Now, for you, preparation You may be severely depressed right now. There's different levels to this, Ernest. You may be so bad off that you stay in bed all day. Whether it be from the loss of a child, loved one, divorce, job, you name it. Whatever it could be. Preparation for you could be a simple prayer. Lord, help me. It could be a simple getting up and brushing your teeth. Okay? There's different levels to this. Preparation for everything's going right and you hope for that next promotion, right? Preparing for that thing. Where am I at in this thing right now? What don't I know? What do I need to know to get my life to the next level? Prepare for battle. Where are you in this grand scheme of thing? Because we're always in preparation mode for something. We're always in preparation for that next chapter. There's so much that goes into this word preparation. I don't have time to really dig in, but let me tell you, this is one of the most vital parts because like a flight attendant, they tell you if you experience the drop down of the oxygen mask to put yours on first. Not your kids. You put yours on first. Joshua says, get provisions ready for yourself first. Go back and check me. The reason he says that, you are no good if you can't breathe, man. There comes a point of time where you got to take care of you. Take provisions for yourself first. Prepare for battle. Number 2, here's what Joshua did next. Joshua sent 2 spies to go into the promised land. Here's what's crazy though, Ernest. Joshua was one of 2 spies out of 12 that Moses had sent to go scour the promised land. All of them came back with gloom and doom. The giants are so bad. Only him and Caleb. 2 people came back with a positive message. I think that Joshua learned a lesson. It's not the quantity of people speaking into my life, but the quality of people speaking into my life, man. Joshua had seen 12 people modeled, but he only sent 2. I think Joshua learned that you have to obtain spies. That's my second battle principle. Obtain spies. I don't mean like 007 kind of spies. I mean truth holders, life givers, man. The people who don't just tell you what you want to hear, but they tell you what you need to hear. It's my second battle principle from the story of Joshua. My third, man, this is where it gets dicey. The next thing Joshua and the Israelites did, man, they had to cross the Jordan. The Jordan River represents a major obstacle in front of them before they could step into all that God has for them. You are facing an obstacle wherever you're at in life. Let me tell you something. If we don't step into that water and allow God to do the impossible, we'll never see the impossible done by God. We have to be willing to be obedient. We have to be willing to face challenges. More on that in a second. But we have to be willing to cross that Jordan. So, crossing the Jordan is number 3. But I want you to not just blindly cross it. We got to name this thing. Is it depression that I'm up against? Is it fear that I'm up against? Is it rejection? Is it, did I just lose my leg in a motorcycle accident? You name it. What is the obstacle that sets before me? And I have to step into it, man. I have to, with a prepared heart, with people around me. I prepare to cross that Jordan. And we see God do an amazing thing, man. When them priests entered ankle deep into that water, he shut that water off, man, and he grew a wall of water. And the Jordan River flows into the Dead Sea. If you know anything about the Dead Sea, man, it's so salty that nothing can live in it. And he shut that water off. And I think, man, so many of us are so salty. We are so salty, James, about what happened to us. We are so lost about what she did to me, what he did to me. We're so dumbfounded about what happened that we're constantly feeding that. By stepping into it, we allow God to do the impossible and just shut it off, man. And they all cross on dry land. Number 4, defeat the enemy. Joshua and the Israelites go in to Jericho. This is where Joshua gets his fame. Jericho, Jericho. They march around the city, man, 7 days, you know, all that. Walls fall, they go in, boom, man. Joshua gets his fame here in Jericho, but something else happens. Joshua had gotten a promise from God that they were going to go in and take the land. Through a prayerful mindset, Joshua was victorious. Something happened along the way. Joshua's head got a little bit big. Somebody on their squad coveted something shiny that was God told them to demolish. And they kept. And they went into the battle of Ai right after Jericho, and got their butts handed to them. They lost. And I think, why would God send them into the promised land, a major victory, and then send them to an immediate loss? Ernest, I was dealing with that. And then all of a sudden it came clear to me. Through a prayerful mindset, Joshua went back and defeated Ai. Here's where the table turns. When I say number 4, defeat the enemy, it's not me who fights, but Christ who lives inside of me. See what I'm saying? Through that prayerful mindset, Joshua was victorious. Joshua got a little bit out of line, him and his people, and got their butts handed to him. Then he goes back into that prayerful mindset, man. And then he continues a life of mission rather than just being emotion.
I think we lost your sound.
But claim your inheritance. Joshua, somewhere around Joshua chapter 13, I think, it says Joshua was out. What's that?
Real quick, we lost your sound for a couple seconds. So go back to the right where you started at with the number 5 again. Start from the beginning because we lost you right real quick.
All right. Claim your inheritance. All right. Claim your inheritance. We find Joshua, the Bible says, well advanced in years. I think it was somewhere around Joshua chapter 13. Okay. Well advanced in years, but the Bible says he still had a lot of work to do. Here's my problem with the church. We have a lot of squatters in the church. A lot of people well advanced in years. I've done my time, right? I don't have anything else to do, right? And that bothers me because Joshua, though he had fought and done all this stuff, he then took the inheritance that was given to him by God and dispersed it among his people. What are we doing with the knowledge we gain? What are we doing with the knowledge we glean? What are we doing with it, man? If we're not bringing people in this journey, if we're not bringing people along with us, we're missing it. We're missing this whole thing. Claiming your inheritance is about bringing people along with you. It's about sharing what God has done in and through your life and for you. Finally, battle principle number 6, live your legacy. Live your legacy. I heard it one time explained as the dash. We all have a date that we're born and a date that we'll die. And in between that is the dash. And that dash represents our life right now. What does your dash say? Live your legacy. Create your legacy. Understand it's not you who fights, but Christ who fights inside of you. And watch what God will do, man. And those 6 battle principles radically shape my life for the mission that God has put me on right now.
Man, I'm definitely intrigued. I got to get the book myself because I got to read it so I can get these principles for myself. Dustin, I really appreciate you being on, man. I appreciate you sharing your story and sharing your wisdom. I'm gonna let you have the last word. So get us a knowledge, something you want to leave with us, and also your social media, platforms and things to have people can get in contact with you. And I'm gonna let you have the last word. But before we get there, I just want to say again, thank you for the listeners for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Where my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problems, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. If you haven't already, listen, subscribe, and share to the podcast. Also, be on the lookout. We got big things coming. We got merchandise. We got the Deal to Heal tees. We got some ebooks coming out. We got some webinars coming out. We got a lot of things that we're working on. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube page, but definitely our Facebook page where we share more information about the podcast and the things that we have going on. Dustin, again, thank you very much for being on. Thank you for being my guest. So give us some last words and also give us your contact information and where we can get the book so that our listeners can support it. So it's on you.
Absolutely. So if you go to, there's a couple of places you can get the book. First of all, thank you, Ernest, for having me on Deal to Heal. Thank you, listeners, for putting up with me for this time. It's quite an amazing story, man, and I hope that you are blessed from it. God is doing some really great things right now in and through the lives of all of us, even in this nation, man. I see it. A lot of people want to get hung up on what's not going right, and we talk about gas prices, and that's a whole nother conversation. And we want to talk about all these different things that are going. But here's my thing, man. You were created for such a time as this. Right now. This is when you're here. This is why you're here. What are you going to do with it? If I had to say anything to leave you guys with, it would absolutely be to stop being afraid what other people think. People don't think of you like that. We're afraid to step out and do something because we're afraid of what people think. We're afraid of what people will say. Man, if we knew how little people really thought about us, we wouldn't be so gripped by that so much. Another thing is know your worth, man. Know that you were created a masterpiece, that God himself knitted you in your mother's womb and has a plan and a purpose for your life. Check this out. The same God that breathes stars into the existence desires a relationship with you. How powerful is that? How powerful is that? Know your worth. The last thing I would say is know your mission and stand behind it. Stand firm. Don't let anybody knock you off the rock. Man, when I look at the lives of Nehemiah in the Bible, when he goes back to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, man, he met opposition from every side. but he couldn't come down off the wall. He knew his mission. Do you know yours? That's my question to everybody listening today. Do you know your mission? And if you don't, it's okay. But it's not okay to stay that way. We got to start doing some preparation. Got to, man. We got to start doing some preparation. Put those right people beside us. We got to step into those obstacles. We got to fight those battles, man. And then whatever we learn, whatever we glean, however we win, we got to share that with other people. And that, my friend, creates our legacy. Now, our book, Courage and Redemption, can be purchased on Amazon, or you can go to my website, dustinrivenbark.com, and you'll find a blue link with a demo video that's like just a little trailer about the book, and you can purchase it right off the website if you go to the blue link on the website there, and it'll tell you all about it. Again, my website is dustinrivenbark.com. My Instagram at dust214. I also have a Dustin Rivenbark Facebook, and yeah, man. So link up with me if you have any questions. Would love to hear from you guys.
All right. Thank you, Dustin, for being on. We're going to make sure we have all those links and things in the show notes. So when you guys go to YouTube and actually watch the actual video, all the information will be there. You can click on it and go and support Dustin. Dustin, again, I want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story and your book with us. I definitely look forward to reading it myself and adding those principles to myself. To my listeners, thank you guys for rocking with me thus far. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And until next time, we will see you guys next week. All right, be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.